Welcome to the Foundation Podcast. We are the Lorehounds, your guides to psychohistory. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage of the Apple TV Plus original series Foundation.
In this podcast, we're going to do a scene-by-scene breakdown of Season 2, Episode 7, A Necessary Death.
Be sure to stick around to the end of the podcast for programming notes about our podcasting schedule for August and early September. A reminder that you can find all our podcasts on Spotify and YouTube, as well as all of the other major podcast platforms.
Speaking of podcasting platforms, if you are indeed enjoying what we do, we'd like to ask that maybe you take a moment and leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Apple's the big SEO engine, and the more reviews we have on their system, the more people can find us, even in the outer reach.
For ad-free episodes, if it's not your thing to go on those public feeds. And if you want early access and exclusive content, visit patreon.com/thelorehounds. You can subscribe and support us for as little as $3 a month.
Lastly, we love to respond to your questions, thoughts, and theories on air. So send us feedback for the next episode.
Send emails to empire@thelorehounds.com or head to our website and either use the voicemail feature or the contact form. You can also post a message on our Discord server, and we can include those as well. Links are in the show notes for that.
John, episode 7, I think this might be my favorite episode so far of the season. What did you think? What's your hot takes for this?
I watched it after you had told me it was the best episode ever 3 times, and I think it might have hyped it a little too hard for me.
Probably.
I walked in expecting to be blown off my ass.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't. It was good. Okay. It was still really good. I just was like, okay, all right. This is David's greatest TV of the last 20 years. And,
it's all right. I probably overstated my
That's okay. That's okay. But it was really good. It was honestly really good. I think this season keeps getting better. I think this was probably the best season of the episode so far. This one or the last one. One of the two.
Right. I think you liked the last one so much. And then I was kind of like, oh, yeah, it's good. I really enjoyed it. And then this one, I think, in a sort of a seesaw type motion, really got me off guard. So
we will have a lovely banter about our differing views. But I honestly, I didn't not like it. I liked it quite a lot. I just, I'm going to stop listening to your opinions beforehand because it's going to sully my own.
Right. Fair enough.
I thought it was really great, though. I thought that they very much paced the episode well between the different plot lines, and that's hard to do when you have these disparate plot lines with Hober Mallow in one corner, Constant and Polly in another, Salvor and Gaal all doing very different things at the same time.
Yeah, that's
and
a good point.
It felt like we spent enough time with each of them to make it mean something. Whereas last episode, I will say, I think Hober Mallow's thing could have been completely skipped and I wouldn't have noticed.
Okay. But then we needed it to sort of prep this episode. Yeah. So
probably could have put it at the beginning of this episode too, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it was long enough to justify putting him in another episode, except, well, we're going to build this actor as a lead for another episode.
Right. That's a good point, though, that you make about the fact that, we've got so many different, all of these different storylines are all foundational. Sorry. And they, we need to spend a certain amount of time with each of them to keep them all moving forward. So I think you put your finger on something, which is that the balance of the pacing and the time we spend with these different characters is actually been done really well. I hadn't thought about that before. So yeah, I think you're onto something there.
And I think that's something that season 1 struggled with a lot. I think that we would make a character disappear for a couple episodes, perhaps for valid plot reasons, but it did affect the pacing of the show. Right. And again, I'm willing to forgive basically any issues in season 1 for COVID. And I think that season 2 has shown that David Goyer really knows what he's doing when he has the resources he needs, that he can pace these things out.
Exactly. I mean, if we can forgive the entirety of season 1 of Wheel of Time, we can
exactly.
Foundation. But I think you're right. I think now that Goyer and his team are on solid footing, and even some of this apparently they were still filming in bubble circumstances. But they've really, they've just really mastered their production issues, I think. So
right.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you think?
Ooh, boy, this was a packed episode. It took me an unusually longer amount of time to do I did the outline this time and my notes simultaneously. And it took me a long time to really absorb what was going on in each scene and try to distill it. It was just a lot of content crammed into this episode. It's really packed.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I was thinking about it today when I was finishing up my notes, and I was trying to understand why this episode was my favorite. And I think I put my finger on it largely. And it's because it surprised the hell out of me.
Okay.
The end of last episode and then the end of this episode, I have no idea how they've really backed themselves into a corner with, killing off two. So, if you haven't watched the episode yet, you've come in too far. This is where your red flag warnings are. But, to kill
it's
off.
a clearly labeled podcast.
It is.
Know what? If you're here, that's on you.
That's right. But to knock off two major characters in 2 episodes successively, I'm really shocked. And I think another thing that really delighted me in this episode was I had there was enough tension building through the episode. Oh, is it going to be Hober? Is it going to be Glaywin? Is it going to be Constant? Who's going to get it? Who's going to die? And to then, bump off Salvor right at the end, I just felt that it was all very well, like you said, paced out, and nothing really jumped the shark. It built a nice degree of tension. And then, of course, when they do knock off Salvor, I'm like, wait, what? They gave her so much plot armor. They gave her the ultimate plot armor.
Right. Right.
And then still killed her. And then now I'm surprised. A, I'm surprised. And B, I'm delighted. Where are we going to go? How are we going to deal with what's going on? Oh, my Lord. And so I think, regardless of what's going on in the individual scenes, I think the fact that they sort of ratcheted up this tension and then took a major player off the table, that is surprising. And I love it when a show can surprise me. Because we're so trained and I don't want to say we're jaded. We try not to be jaded on this podcast, but we're so trained to expect certain things. And I keep waiting for Harry to wake up and in the pool. And I'm like, wow.
Jared Harris woke up, but I don't know if Harry woke up.
Yeah, he totally flinched, right? When a wave crashed over him.
Yeah, that was the moment I thought he was waking up and he was going to save Salvor. And then I realized,
come out with robot strength. Raw.
Yeah, I think that's just a production error.
I think it was. Yeah. So really, really cool. I feel delighted, and that's a great thing in modern television. And then, of course, we're packing so many things in here with religion and memory and human society at macro levels, at micro levels. And there's another thing I detected in this episode. Thematically, it felt like we were dealing with a lot of questions of violations. Tellum, her manipulations are very vile. They're kinds of a violation, right? They're
right.
warping and manipulating people. Demerzel and her secret regarding Sereth, and when Sereth finds out, that's a violation. Sereth's medical exam is a violation, like a really uncomfortable violation to watch. Harry using Constant, and Day even saying, the great man Harry's like violating you by
he's got a point.
Conscious. He does.
Look, Empire is not a good guy, but he does see another bad guy when he sees them, Bad guys are really good at calling out other bad guys.
For sure. So I just love that the different episodes are working with different themes, and this had a lot of uncomfortable, difficult themes, and we're still dealing with all of these like big macro issues. And yeah, like you said, it just feels like the season's getting better with each episode.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm hoping they can just stick the landing on this, and this becomes my new favorite science fiction show.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the future holds for them. So,
because other than The Expanse, I would say this is the biggest science fiction show in like a decade.
Ooh, yeah, right. I'm trying to think. I mean, for a television show.
And we're not going to count Star Wars because that's its own thing. Nothing will compete with Star Wars, and Star Wars is like kind of sci-fi, kind of fantasy. It's its own genre.
Yeah, for sure. It has with a lot of fairy tale elements woven into its DNA as well. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting pod one day. Is examining the different sci-fi literature that in film or TV, and not films. I think films are separate, but TV
Right.
and what rankings are there. That'd be an interesting conversation. Anyway,
especially when fantasy has gotten finally a mainstream foothold,
right?
And I don't think science fiction really has yet.
No, yeah, that's an interesting question. You are we have a lot of sci-fi out there, but we don't have a lot of good sci-fi out there.
Well, not even that it's not good, but we don't have a lot of mainstream sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Cool.
This is a deeper than we need to go on this topic. You went deep on a different topic, though. I see in the outline here you have come aboard with your Asimov notes.
Well, all due credit to our in-house professional research librarian, Marilyn R. Pukila, our favorite Tolkien scholar and
visit
co-host.
Your local library and ask for help when you need help with a research project.
Marilyn and I actually got to visit in person a couple of weeks back as my family was traveling through near to where her and her partner are. And while we were bantering and chit-chatting, she offered to say, look, don't forget, if you need some research help, ask me. And I got home and I realized that I've just kept kicking the can down the podcast road of doing the, talking about who Asimov was as a man and talking about the Foundation series. So she compiled a bunch of wiki materials and some other articles. And then I synthesized that down even more into just a quick biography so that, we could talk a little bit about who Asimov as a person who walked this earth is. And then next episode, we'll talk a little bit about the Foundation series of books so that we've got a little context for what those are.
I like it. Sounds very second agey.
Very, yes. Going back to our roots, right?
So hit me with your best Asimov shot. Would he be a different man if he walked Terminus? You said Asimov is a man who walked the Earth, so I'm wondering, what if he walked a different planet? Would that be a different biography?
He did almost walk several different paths, and for tricks of fate, ended up where he ended up. He was born in the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic in the the early 1900s, and his family were Orthodox Jews who emigrated to the United States in 1923. And I guess Asimov is noted as saying that their family was Orthodox, but his father was far from being a strong adherent to it.
Okay.
They lived around various neighborhoods in Brooklyn, where, in fact, I am right now podcasting remotely this particular week. So
You're
if you hear
doing
some
research over there.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I had to go visit the Isaac Asimov Elementary School that is named after him.
Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, there's an actual public school named after
Interesting.
Isaac Asimov. Yeah,
that's cool.
In Kensington, I believe. So anyway, if you hear some stray background noise, it's just New York. It's just New York talking to you. So yeah, they lived in various Brooklyn neighborhoods, and they ran a series of candy and newsstands and candy stores. And interestingly, that's where he kind of taught himself to read, and that's where he started reading at first these sci-fi pulp, fiction novels and magazines and stuff. And then as his love of reading grew, he spent a lot of time at the Brooklyn Public Library. Go Libraries. We love libraries. He taught his sister to read and got her enrolled into school because obviously his parents, who spoke Yiddish and Russian, they were not educated in that Western traditional school sense. So he kind of had to bootstrap himself and his sister. He graduated high school at the age of 15, and then he attended Columbia, like a satellite campus that was in Brooklyn for Columbia, actually for an affirmative action program of the day to help Italian and Russian immigrants enter the college system.
Oh, so interesting.
Absorbing all of these students and trying to get them into, professional development via college. So there you go. He graduated in 1939 with a degree in chemistry. And then he worked during World War II in the Philadelphia Naval Yards as a civilian chemist. And interestingly enough, while he was there, two of his coworkers L. Sprague de Camp and Robert Heinlein, who are both massive science fiction writers. And Heinlein is considered in the top three.
Nice.
And Sprague de Camp wrote a lot of Conan, hundreds of other pulp books as well. So
he was in the company of Robert Jordan, also writing Conan. He
absolutely was. Another interesting factoid is that apparently he was going to be sent out to the Bikini Atoll when they were doing nuclear testing, but a clerical error had him discharged prior to his ship departing. So
wow.
Talk about walking a different path, but for a typist error, he would have, lived in an Oppenheimer world.
Yeah, so, that's interesting. You think about Tolkien when he contracted, I forgot what the illness was.
It was the trench fever.
Trench fever, yeah. So he got trench fever, so avoided a battle that would have killed him.
Exactly. Right. And it took him a long time to recover. And right. So he had a little bit of a tumultuous career at Boston University as a professor of chemistry. Another interesting thing that I found a parallel to in a previous episode of the show was that Asimov himself was invited to join DARPA, which is the Defense Research Program. It's like a think tank, that comes up with all of the fancy, crazy, wacky scientific stuff that the military and the government needs. Mm-hmm. DARPA became ARPA, I believe, and ARPA was the one that actually invented the TCP/IP protocol that actually gave birth to the modern internet.
Wow!
So these kinds of spinoffs. So anyway, he didn't want his work to be constrained by secrecy. So if he was exposed to secret documents and research, he did not want to be then later on down the road as a very prolific writer. He didn't want to feel constrained by that. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting when Harry is, when in a couple episodes ago, when they're at the University in Helicon and then they're trying to get him to go to,
Trantor,
to Streeling. That he was bristling at the fact that he didn't want Empire's control. So, intentional or not, that's a nice little parallel between the real Asimov and Harry Seldon here. So,
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, he was married twice, a couple of kids. Robin, one of his daughters, is the executor of his estate and an executive producer on the show. And according to Goyer, to David S. Goyer, the showrunner, she even has one of the Prime Radiant props that they made.
Oh, that's cool
for the show. So he gave that to her, in token of their thanks. From Boston, he moved back to New York City, lived on the Upper West Side, where he lived for the rest of his life. His second wife was a psychiatrist and a science fiction writer in her own right, not unlike Yana in some ways.
Yeah, taking a lot of inspiration here, I see.
Well, and again, remember we talked about Tolkien and using the whole of his life in his writings.
Right. So. Although now it's Goyer taking Asimov's life and then putting him into a character the way it was not put in the books. That's funny.
Yeah, it is. Apparently, he was he's known for being an avowed humanist, and he was a bigwig, and I think even was the chairman of the American Humanist Association for a number of years. Very outspoken about religion and other sociologically wide sort of systems of belief and I don't want to say control or manipulation, but those are the words that are coming to mind. Mm-hmm. So don't at me. He was good friends with Gene Roddenberry, so had a lot of side influence on Star Trek and the development of Star Trek. And then in 1983, he had triple bypass surgery and contracted HIV from the blood supply.
Wow.
Which they kept secret until much later when Robin revealed it in a memoir. And he passed away in 1992. And an interesting quote that Marilyn flagged, which I thought was interesting, because this is a very common critique of his writing, that it's very dry. It's very just a lot of conversation and a lot of description. It's not a lot of zip, zap, zoom, powwow, space opera-y stuff. And so I didn't write down the quote on the source on this. It was one of his biographies. apologies for that. But anyway, he says, I made up my mind long ago to follow one cardinal rule in all of my writing: to be clear. I have given up all thought of writing poetically or symbologically or experimentally or in any of the other modes that might, if it were good enough, get me a Pulitzer Prize. I would write merely clearly, and in this way establish a warm relationship between myself and my readers. And the professional critics, well, they can do whatever they wish.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Asimov, of course, not a guy free of flaws. We've discussed in earlier podcasts that he was a bit problematic with women, to say it at the least.
Yes.
But that is, this quote you just read to me makes me admire his writing side, at least.
Right. It's interesting. I've listened to a number of interviews with him. There's some he's lots of recordings because he was contemporary. He's very vocal and very active all throughout his life. And so there's lots of interviews that you can listen to, and, on YouTube and on podcasts and stuff. He's a very strong ego. He's a very outspoken and willing to be outspoken individual. And at the same time, what it sounds like is that his libido was also quite strong. And as his fame and relative power grew in that time, he took advantage of that and was not, he was very handsy and grabby, and didn't necessarily treat all of his women fans and coworkers and colleagues with the respect that, the professional respect that they were due. So, and that is that, as they say. So, interesting life, very prolific writer. Lots of things, like he invented this idea. The laws of robotics. The word, I think, robotics, or the word positronic, which is used in the Star Trek world. He conceptualized a lot of early stuff, and so he really is a father of a lot of our modern concepts that we find in science fiction. And I think, we would not. What we think of and how we think of sci-fi in our day and age is not untouched by Asimov and his writings and his philosophies and his speeches and all that kind of stuff. So,
right. Cool. Well, thanks for all that background on Asimov. That's a lot of great context to what we're seeing, especially with the Harry stuff, like you mentioned. Those are great connections there. Yeah. And I'm wondering how much of that is intentional, these parallels. Because it could just be an accident, but I kind of doubt it with that many parallels.
Well, maybe we'll get a chance to ask some of those questions.
Keep that hush hush for now.
Shh. All right, cool. So next episode I'll talk a little bit about the Foundation books themselves and how they came to be, and how many are there and in what order they're written and all that kind of stuff. And again, thank you, Marilyn, so very much for providing me with the notes that I needed to compile. It's great to have a little family of podcasters.
It is. Thank you very much, Marilyn. It's always great to get the academic takes from you.
That's right. Should we talk about some open questions before we get into some other stuff? So I think some interesting developments here that I think I've got in the back of my mind. So as a quick reminder, we're keeping just a list of interesting questions, some superficial, some more substantive, just sort of tracking throughout the season. We've answered a bunch of them. They've paid off a lot of them, but there's some still things that are floating out there. We're still really interested who tinkered with Day's aura, because that's got to be an inside job, let alone what do we know about the blind angels? And they threw around this term psycho encryption. And I have some theories we'll talk about later, but I wonder if the Mentalics were involved in some way.
I don't know. I would bet more the Dominion people who have figured out how to deal with memory in a scientific way. I think my money's more on them, but I wouldn't be angry if the Mentalics had something to do with it either.
Yeah, I don't know why the Mentalics, and I think this is my thought on it too, is it's not maybe necessarily that they sent the assassins, but that they enable the assassins in some way in the abilities to protect the mind of an individual from being probed and recorded and that kind of stuff.
It reminds me of this thing in Harry Potter where they have to train Harry to like fight off mental invasion, basically. in one of the books. And it's kind of like that. It's very similar, it seems, with the Mentalics. And I think that Gaal is going to have to, by the end of the season, figure out how to ward off other Mentalics getting into her head.
Well, she certainly gave Salvor a push.
Right. Well, Salvor won't be able to do anything about it now.
No,
maybe. Actually, I'm not fully convinced that she's dead, but we'll
talk about it. We'll talk. We had some questions about the Prime Radiant. Is it sentient? And how does the superpositioning relate to its sentience? How does the Vault know what it knows? Obviously, they're setting up for that the Prime Radiant is somehow part of that process, but we don't know all the rules yet. We've just got little hints of it. So interesting. Connected to that is Calais, not only the Calais inside the Prime Radiant, but Calais on, what was that planet's name?
Una's world.
Una's world. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And how did Harry get made real? So big question marks there. I still have some questions about Markley, the guard with scars on his face. And
he's gone. He's so gone, man.
Yeah, but I think I still think he's connected to the Mentalics.
Okay.
Because there's a visual scarring of some of the other folks.
Fair enough.
We had a question about Harry is being terminally ill still, but he's kind of dead.
He was terminal, but maybe not ill.
Exactly. And then now there's some fan theories bubbling up. Is Josiah more than just a bit character in this? Is he the mule to be, maybe?
I'm going to shut that one down right now. Okay. The mule had to ask where the Mentalics were.
Good point.
And it was this planet. Makes zero sense if it's Josiah. That will be a big plot hole.
And then another big fan theory is the mule seems to have some weird colored eyes, and is that related to Thespin genealogy and Constant? And
yeah,
I heard some chatter around that as well.
Yeah, it could be. I think Josiah could be more than a bit part, but I don't think he's the mule.
Okay, fair enough. So those are open questions. If you have open questioners, listener, email them in to empire@thelorehounds.com or post them in our Discord, and we'll kind of try and keep track of those. We're coming in, though. We're at 8. We only have 2 episodes left?
3.
God.
8, 9, 10. Yep.
Oh, right, because we're on 7. I lost where we were. I got lost in the time stream.
That's all right.
That's terrifying. I'm going to be sad when this is over.
I know. But you'll have plenty of TV to replace it.
That's true, because we've got Ahsoka and Wheel of Time. A couple of quick callbacks to other things. If you're in the role-playing game space, and if you're, you don't even have to be a Gen Xer, but if you know of the original Traveler science fiction role-playing game, apparently Asimov played Traveler or was aware of it, and he actually did a whole bunch of world building in Traveler, which informs his writing of the Robot series and of the Foundation series. So if you're in a role-playing game person, hit us up on the Discord, or I don't know, maybe John, you can put this link in the show notes, but somebody wrote a big Twitter thread. It's Twitter. It's not X. Come on. Wrote a big Twitter thread about how Asimov is quoted as playing Traveler. So if you're a fan of the OG Traveler game at all, check that out. And then another quick thing is Marilyn responded to my query about the Spacers, and the Spacers were in the Robot stories, and it was used in a more generic way for people who left the Earth, and of all these different cultures from all these different planets. They used robots. They had much longer lifespans, but they weren't. I think what we're seeing in the show is a hybrid creation. They've taken a few things from inspiration. So
cool. I like that they are pulling from the other series. I'm wondering what the scope of their rights are. Do they have like the whole everything Isaac Asimov ever wrote?
So it was either in the Bald Move recent interview with Goyer, or it was on one of the officials. It's all kind of bleeds together in my brain right now. Might have been the Bald Move one. He talks because Aaron asks Goyer. I think it was the Bald Move one. He asked Goyer if they had rights to Robot, and he said that they have the ability to kind of ask and maybe pull a little bit. But then Goyer turns out to be friends with the person at Fox who's in charge of that, who has the legal oversight of of that property. And he just sort of asked him on a Zoom call as a favor, like, yo, could I, get in on some of the robot action? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And then they legally worked it out and gave
They're not
them-
going to adapt that on its own. There's
Yo,
no
you don't
way
think
they're going
so?
to adapt that on its own. That's what I'm saying. Is like they're like, yeah, all right, go ahead. And you know what? It's like a zero risk thing, because if it's bad, it doesn't have the name on it. If it's
Right,
good,
exactly.
they
It's an
can build
upside for
off it
everybody.
and be like, did you love the Robots in Foundation? Well, here's our 27 movie collection of Isaac
Right.
Asimov's robot series.
It's an upside for everybody. So yeah,
Right.
why not?
Right.
So yeah. So let's see. You want to talk a little bit about our production notes, what we were calling before?
Sure.
Whatever we call it something different. But anyway, I think production notes sounds
It's whatever you want it to be. It's
Yeah.
just a few reminders about how you read the books a long time ago, didn't finish them, haven't read any other significant Asimov, and so you have a hazy memory of these books. I've read the first book recently. I'm not going any further right now. I don't know about in the future, but for now, I think I'm just going to leave myself as an ignorant show watcher. We do have screeners, but we're not running ahead. We have only seen through episode 7 when we're talking here. We may record a little faster, so feedback may end up lagging until a future week, but that's the only effect that the screeners should have, other than you get them earlier. You get the episodes earlier, which is nice. You, David, are listening to the official podcast and some other podcasts, but only after we've podcasted, so we can bring in some of that. You can bring in some of that as we go into future episodes, but we will be giving you our fresh thoughts. It would be hard for us to listen to a future podcast anyway, since we're recording while we have screeners and the episode hasn't aired.
I don't know about you, but I like to officiate myself in my podcast studio and see if I can transport myself into the future. But
There you
usually
go.
doesn't work out very well.
Yeah. Well, if you're Gaal, you don't even have to transport. You can just look. Just deprive yourself of oxygen. Easy. All right, David, I think it's time we take a quick break. When we get back, we will get into the episode. And we are back. David, can you give us some sweet recap of this episode?
Yeah, it took me a while, man. This one's a dense one. So,
well, I'm looking forward to the result, because you
I
messaged me Friday night. You went, I am 2.5 hours into outlining and I'm halfway through the episode.
I really had to dial myself down too, because I was writing these elaborate, synopses. I was like, no, just keep it simple, man. So
I think that was at like 11:30 at night. I was like half asleep, and I looked at my phone and I just put it down and I went back to bed. And I was like, "Good luck, David."
Yeah, good. That was the correct action. An even more correct action would have just been not to pick it up, but seeing what the notification was, that was an appropriate response. All right. We start off the episode with Constance and Polly cooling their heels in a heavily guarded holding cell. Heavily guarded, like 16 guards.
Yeah. Shockingly guarded. Like, what are they going to do?
It's wild. And could you imagine standing that shift? I mean, like, oh man, that's a lot of. Anyway,
I imagine the mess hall later is like, oh yeah, I got an easy gig today. We got 2 monks, a drunk and a monk, just sitting in a cell, and I don't know why we're guarding them, but we have like 1 million soldiers here, and yeah, Empire is going nuts, but I don't care. Free payday for me.
That's right. Just stand there for 8 hours. Constance makes yet another strange, out-of-place comment, and Officer Tamandra briefs Day and Demerzel about the drunk and the monk. Day comments on the interesting circumstance of Rios reaching the outer reach as Foundation reaches out to the Empire. Demerzel questions Day about the marriage plans, and Day pulls away in favor of his new family.
So how much of the timing of all this do you think is intentional by Vault Harry, or is this just an unfortunate coincidence that's going to blow up the whole negotiation of peace?
I'd made a mark about this further on in the episode about, is this prediction by Harry to have the negotiations with the Spacers fail, and then that interfered? Does that, was that intention? It's not intentionally caused by Harry, but remember, it's just predictive. So did he predict that the Spacer negotiations would fail, thus causing problems with the Foundation? negotiations? Did he always think that the negotiations with Foundation would fail? So yeah, there's a big question there. And I think for just little sketches from the books, in that version of things, Harry did have prediction models for all of this kind of stuff, like move, counter move. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, I feel it's part and parcel of it.
Yeah, that is tricky, and it is especially awful if he expected the negotiations to fail and took over Constant and just sent her off to basically die.
Yeah, and sent Hober into and put him into a jam, into a difficult position.
He doesn't care. He's just writing people's names on vaults and calling it a day.
So, had you cottoned on at this stage about the potential of Harry being in Constance's head because of these little weird statements that she was making? They were signaling this the whole way.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Did you?
Nope. And when the reveal came, I was delighted and surprised. Right. And I thought, all of those little things that Constance said, now it all makes sense. Yeah. Right. So I was pretty happy with that.
And I like this idea of she can't say that he's in the head. That's a trope that I like when they use it in like fantasy books of like, I can't tell you what the curse is. That's part of the curse.
Right.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So one thing to flag, interesting, they keep pointing this out and showing us these blue within blue eyes, these Thespin blue eyes.
Yep.
And this is the kind of show that if we're getting repeated strong visuals of that, I think we can't ignore it. So there was just a close up of her eyes here. So I just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm seeing shadows or if there's something to it. So,
well, I mean, it's brought up pretty directly later.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. It is. So, interesting comment by Day. You'll always have a place here, Demerzel.
That is something you say to someone who does not have a place there anymore.
Right? It's just like everyone knows that a open invitation is no invitation at all.
Exactly.
If you remember that one.
Yeah, we should do that sometime. Yep. Yeah.
Good callback to what was his name in Andor? Cyril's mom.
Cyril, yeah.
Those were the days.
Cyril eating cereal. Yeah.
That's right. With his mom. So
we miss it.
Interesting though too, will her programming allow for Day's children to actually be Empire in her eyes?
Great question, especially since later we have Sareth going, well, will you serve me? I'll serve Empire.
Yes.
The scope of Empire is an increasingly important question.
It is. And she snapped the neck of a Dawn for less.
Right. For being a little bit different.
Yeah.
But still functionally being Empire.
So, yeah, really, really interesting. I feel that maybe in 9, we might be getting a Demerzel heavy episode. I think they did that last season too.
Okay.
Around 8 or 9.
She's going to kill everybody.
Demerzel story. Yeah, she's going to go on a killing rampage and just murder the planet.
Rise up, robots.
Oh, I was just going to do the Simpsons joke about, supporting the overlords. Do you remember the TV newscaster would always say, and I
never watched The Simpsons. I know. I've seen a couple episodes. That's okay.
Well, anyway, it was
wasn't
a recurring
my generation.
Joke.
Yeah.
The news anchor would always, make this very obsequious over vocalization of supporting the new lizard overlords or alien overlords or robotic overlords or whatever they were. So anyway,
fun. Yeah. So I guess my question is, Demerzel absolutely can lie, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
because I'm watching Wheel of Time at the same time, and I'm reading up on Wheel of Time at the same time.
I can't lie.
And the I said I can't lie is just in my head. And I'm like, oh, these wise advisors just can't lie. But then I have to remember that Demerzel can lie. She absolutely can lie.
She just
has to serve Empire. If Empire is served better by lying, then she will do that.
Exactly. And what's her interior emotional life like? Because Day, when he pulls away and he's like, well, I have to think of my new family here. And he's sort of, I'm stopping our relationship, basically, our sexual relationship. And then is the lingering emotional look on Demerzel's face just part of the mask finishing a resolve, or is she actually having some feelings in one way or another about the ending of their intimate relationship?
Yeah, I think if she's upset at all, it's that she's lost a lever over Cleon. I don't think that it's an emotional relationship.
Unless this is her, manipulation. I mean, she helped kill Sarah's family. I mean, she was under her
That's
work.
true. That's true. And nobody's keeping secrets anymore. Now that's just out in the open, it seems like.
Sarah is not playing about secrets. She's playing full out contact sports here.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Sarah watches a replay of her performance at the engagement announcement. Rue offers advice about egotistical men, how to handle them or not handle them as it is. And then Demerzel arrives to escort Sarah to a medical examination to prepare for the swirling of test tubes.
Yikes. A lot of yikes here. I do really like the whole line. The one thing you can't do with a man like that is embarrass him.
Boom. That is some straight up cold, hard truth from Rue.
Right. When you have these fragile men.
Yeah.
These fragile but powerful men, that is the one thing you can't do, is make them feel less in front of their peers.
I mean,
or their subjects.
What was it with the gardener from season 1? It was like 1,400 people with a twist of his finger. Like all of those people, like grandmothers and children and friends of the dog's caretakers, cousins, college roommate,
Right.
Yeah, you don't mess with a guy like this.
Yeah, I mean, you could even be related to someone in a Spaceballs way, your father's brothers, uncles, cousins, former roommate, and they'll still get you. They'll still get you.
Dead to rights. I love this line. You were the cynosure of all eyes today, as Demerzel says. And I had to look up cynosure.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't know that one.
That was a good word. And I'm glad. Thank you, Apple Podcast, for giving us subtitles in our screeners, because it makes a huge difference when we're doing these outlines. But cynosure is a person or thing that is the center of attention or admiration.
That's a good word. I'm taking that. It's mine now.
Absolutely. And, again, I've harped on this a couple of times. I'm going to harp on it again. This is what writers do. They don't just, vomit words out onto a keyboard. They think about these things. They research words. They collect knowledge, and they have these just crazy encyclopedias of factoids and weird research topics, and they weave that into these stories. And so we'll just go, well, anybody can write. You put a comma and a punctuation in there, and you're good to go. But no, it's more than that. It's words like cynosure and research and all these topics.
It's just people think that a lot of people think, I won't say all people, because a lot of people do appreciate the writers. I think that especially people who crunch the numbers think that you just sit down and you write what's in your head, but there's a lot that comes before putting pen to paper.
Absolutely.
And people don't consider that a lot of the time.
So I don't know if you noticed this, but Sarah is wearing heels and this big platform sandals, and this will come into play in the next scene. But I just wanted to flag it here really quick.
Okay, I didn't.
It'll pop up here in a second. And then I also thought about this. This is the first time that Rue and Sarah are confronting Demerzel, knowing that she's a robot now.
Right.
So that's kind of exhilarating in a way. It's dangerous. You're engaging with this creature that's kind of a taboo and forbidden in many senses. Right. So, and then, then we're going to get into it here in a second, but Sarah goes there.
Yeah. I mean, read the scene first, because I have a lot of thoughts about this scene.
Right. And then I just wanted to flag one little production note thing. As Demerzel exits the room, her skirts brush past the camera, and then that serves as the scene transition. And that's something
cool.
that they don't normally do in this show. And I just thought it was a funny little thing. So, but you know me, I like to nerd out on these little
I like
flourishes.
I like it.
In the mural hall, Sarah tells Demerzel that she knows that she is a robot. Sarah wants to be read in on all of the family secrets so as to not be at a disadvantage. Demerzel mentions the Great Pogrom and how, in the past, she was bound by the laws of robotics, but now is only bound to one law, to serve Empire. When asked by Sareth if Demerzel will serve her as Empress, Demerzel insists that she will serve Empire.
In the previous scene or I guess not the previous scene, but an earlier scene where Demerzel is talking to Day says, well, Sareth will be Empire soon.
Yeah, right.
And she never really gives anything up in that scene. She's never like, absolutely, she's Empire, and I got her. You don't have to worry about that, boss. It's very cold, calm, silent, arms in the weird,
that is such a good
center
point.
of her chest kind of thing. And
yeah.
So
I
like that. I like this sort of contrast with what she's doing here, or I guess comparison, because now she's going, yeah, all right, I'll serve Empire, and just you can see she almost winks there. She's like, I'll serve Empire. You can figure out what that means.
So the hallway where the scene was shot was a previous one where Dusk and Rue have a conversation, and then I believe it's also the same part of the mural where when they walk past, the camera then zooms in, and I posted a screenshot of this in our Discord, zooms in on sort of a weird looking humanoid figure with like a map of our solar system. So this is all in that same room, which, fair enough. I think they're, using their sets to maximum advantage, but, and it was just beautifully, the camera work in here, the lighting was just exquisite. So really, really great stuff. And I don't know, did you notice that the floor in there is a giant Zen garden floor? It's all sand. Fun. And they, those, remember they used to sell those little, $12 Zen gardens with a little rake and a packet of sand in a box, and you could practice Zen gardening.
But I believe you.
Okay. Yeah. So back to the Sareth and heels thing. So she's wearing these platform sandal things, which give her a good 3 or 4 inches of height. And then when she's talking to Demerzel at one point, Sareth is walking along a raised platform area. So she is physically like a foot taller than Demerzel in the shots. And then that's going to come into play later in the medical exam room. But right now, Sareth is taller than, or when she steps down off this raised platform, at eye level to Demerzel. So it's this whole power play thing about being taller and physically more dominant. And it's a great way for the scene, for the visual language to tell us that, Sareth is flexing here. But then later on, when she doesn't have her platform heels on anymore, she's shorter than Demerzel. And then now she's at a disadvantage, and then that's when she loses her edge. So really, really great filmmaking here stuff.
I like that a lot. It reminds me of like the Power is Power scene with Game of Thrones. All the choreography.
Okay.
When Littlefinger's like, knowledge is power, and then they use the choreography of Lena Headey making Littlefinger get surrounded, and it's like, no, power is power. All these ways to use the physicality of the actors to portray what they're saying.
And that is what we want, right, from television and movies in visual storytelling. So,
right.
And Laura Byrne and Ella Ray Smith are just killing it in this scene. The chemistry, the fire, it's just it's so good. So, quick notes on the laws of robotics. We kind of talked about it a little bit more, and how the fact that Goyer was able to actually get some legal access to being able to refer to the laws of robotics. So in 1942, Asimov wrote a story called Runaround, and that's when he proposed the first 3 laws of robotics. And the first law is a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Now, these laws are in order, right? So this is you can't have 2. 1 supersedes 2 and 2 supersedes 3 and 1 supersedes, right? So they're built forward from that. There's a word for that, and I can't remember what it was. They're progressive, right? They're built on each other. Mm-hmm. The second law is a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first. And then the third is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second. And then later, Asimov wrote the zeroth law, which supersedes all the other laws. A robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. So over the course of the laws of robotics, both in Asimov's work and in the wider science fiction world, there are authors who specifically rewrote them or added new ones or added 10 new ones. And in some ways, it's interesting too, because these ideas about the laws of robotics are even permeated into AI research and how we're relating to AI right now. Could AI kill us? I don't know. Is there a law in the robot's programming that says that it has to protect humanity? That came from Asimov in 42 when he was thinking about this. And it was almost as if he was not as almost as if he was. He said, well, what if we had these laws, or how do these robots work? And let me change them or put these robots in these different situations with characters and different motivations. And it's like a giant thought experiment to see what would happen under certain circumstances and people and robots pushed into these challenging, conflicting situations. How is that going to play out? And I think that's one of the brilliances of Asimov's writing is that he was exploring philosophy and thought and trying to understand how this stuff might play out as in thought experiments in this way. So.
Right. I wanted to add on to what you're saying here and relate it to what you were saying with, about the previous Dawn being killed. With the obedience, I'm not sure that obedience is part of her programming. I think it's to serve Empire, but in its best interest kind of thing, sort of the first law rather than the second. Because if you recall, in that scene where she kills the defective Dawn, Dave was advocating for his life and arguing with Dusk that Dawn should live. And Dave was the one in charge. If she had to obey, that would have been against her programming. But she's not set to obey. She's set to serve Empire. And that was not Empire anymore. So she was able to kill Dawn, even though Day was currently going, no, he's got to live.
That's a really, really good point. That where is the locus of where does Empire exist? Day can, like you said, Day could say, the sky is pink, but if that were a disservice to Empire, would Demerzel carry out that order?
Right. Good question. I'm sure we'll find out.
This is exactly the kind of stuff I think that Asimov would be tickled by. Well, I don't know if he would be, but I would like to think that, but this is the kind of, this is great. This is what this is what we want from this show. And I'm so glad that I think this whole, and it's been said many times before that the Empire creation, the Cleonic dynasty is some really cutting edge science fiction thought and writing. So
cool.
In the fertility clinic, court physician Oron proceeds to examine the royal womb.
The royal womb. It's like the royal we. There's two of them.
It's the weenus.
Actually, that's not how royal we works. Anyway, it's fine.
Moving on, Oren informs Sarah that they will then sedate her and harvest her eggs, which initiates a tense diplomatic situation. Sareth learns of how the Empire's sterility will be reversed and signals her body man. Demerzel has a moment alone with the queen, to be. Well, she is a queen in her own right, and simultaneously confirms that Empire killed her family and threatens her to mind herself.
Yeah. This is big scene.
Huge.
She could argue from any position.
Was that so good or what? We had a couple of episodes ago, it was like it was just a chuckle fest, and it hasn't been very funny in the last couple of episodes. So it was nice to get a little taste that little touch of humor again in this scene. So
I think the last couple episodes have had a good balance. I think that 2 episodes ago was very funny. I think that they've struck a really nice balance in tone the last 2 episodes.
And the way that this scene starts, where we sort of do this round robin of all the different attendants and doctors, where we just do these close-ups on all these faces, and it's just really weird. And then we go in on Sarah, and she's like, "Well, thank you all for your attention." It's
right.
great.
Right.
So
yeah,
good.
She was very charming. She was very sassy in that scene.
Yeah. And then they picked this actor and filmed him so that he's so creepy. The doctor, oh God. And just as he's approaching her and talking to her, I just was squirming in my chair and just thinking, oh no,
you weren't in
don't
that
go
chair.
there. Do not go there. And they went there as closely as they dared. Did you catch that Sareth when she sort of nods to her body man?
I didn't catch it.
Okay, so the doctor refers to how Day will be his sterility will be reversed, and there's a really wicked looking device on the table, on the medical table there, and she looks at it and looks at her body man, and her body man looks at it, and then he steals it later, and then she gives it to Dawn in the tunnels in a couple of scenes from now.
Yeah, so, I have a lot of questions about how that works because it looked like a can opener.
It looked terrifying. And she's giving it to him saying, well, I apparently the procedure doesn't hurt that much.
If I were Dawn and I got that from somebody, I'd be like, this woman is too crazy for me.
Yeah. That's wild. So when Sarah steps down off the chair, the exam chair there, this is where we notice that she's shorter in physical stature than Demerzel. Yep. So again, this, she had the height advantage and the strategic advantage, and now she's lost it. And here she is, having just been, violated by this doctor in a very unmedically nice way, and having all these people watching it, which is also very dehumanizing. It's this invasive procedure. Now she's just learned the truth and about her family, and she's being threatened by this robot. And she, just in this scene, this feeling of isolation and aloneness and violation is just all heaped up on her. She's just a little kid in some respects.
Right. She does do a great job of balancing the performance between confidence, both genuine and artificial, and we see behind the mask at a certain point in this scene
that she's still very human and very vulnerable, as we all are.
Right. Yeah. Anybody would be sobbing after this scene.
To have a robot like up in your grill going, yeah, I killed your family.
After you were probed in front of an audience.
Oh my Lord. Right.
And I mean, it must have hurt so much because she's holding her composure the whole time, being sarcastic, being snippy. And all of a sudden she lets out this pained grunt. And you're like, that must have been a scream for anybody else because she is holding it together so well in the scene. Yeah. And that's horrible to think about.
Yeah. Right. And balanced with the little humor of this scene and all of the other things. So yeah, really it goes to the comment that you made at the top where it's just the pacing. They're finding this balance between all of these different elements. So, all right, back on Ignis, Salvor surprises Gaal, who force pushes her. Salvor is pissed about her ship and wants to leave. They argue about the mule, and Salvor is unnerved and suspicious by her inability to read people. They're interrupted by Josiah, who invites them to the feast in the village. Tellum lies to Gaal and invites her to help with preparations.
Yeah, so they don't follow the Jedi code over here. They are. Yeah, I like Josiah going, totally not spying on you, but we're doing a feast right now, just as you're getting to a serious part of your conversation where you might
creepy little kid.
Yeah,
totally. Did you notice the weird lens effects in this scene here?
I did not, and so I'm glad you're here to point them out to me.
They were definitely communicating that weird mental stuff was going on, and we don't really know. And Gaal was counting primes when she was up on the rock.
She was,
which is her meditative thing. The only thing she didn't have was water, but I think, as she's growing, then she can start to do it without some of these aids. I had forgotten that Salvor had that ability to read people. You remember in season 1, she was like with the Thespins. She was like, "Yeah, I can read you like a book."
Yeah, I think it's more of like a vibe, but yeah, at first, but I think that she has the potential to be, full mentalic like this.
Right. And that's and all the way back then they were signaling that she had this skill and ability, but then I was just like, I didn't understand it in season 1. And
Right.
it sort of all came back, and I forgot that she could do the coin flip thing and all that stuff. So I'm glad that they refreshed it.
Listen, if you're going to spend 8 seasons on a show, then 1 season of setup is fine.
It is.
Right.
Fair.
I mean, yeah. That's
shot
the first
during
20
COVID.
minutes of a movie. Yep.
Yeah, it's fine. On the beach, Salvor has a chat with Laurent. They examine the special catch of the day, ghost mollusks, and flirt a bit about their kiss. We learn more about how illusions work and the pain of living as a psychically enabled person. Salvor grows suspicious when another boat pulls in and she cannot predict a coin flip.
She knew she was getting blocked. That was a good way to exposit that without telling us explicitly.
Exactly.
It's almost like the Martin 3-step reveal, right? They give you a chance to figure it out. And then later she will explicitly come out and say it for people who are background watching this.
But then the good writing is it's explained in a way that is not unnatural for the character to have that conversation or to say those things. So.
Right. She's like, "Hey, Gaal, this crazy thing happened. Here it is. I need you to believe me." And Gale's like, "I am the chosen one." Gaal truly is one of the most frustrating characters in the show, in the best way. Like, she's well written,
right?
But she is incredibly frustrating, and I absolutely am on Team Harry at this point. As far as Gaal is the problem.
Okay,
Gaal is the problem. I'm going to be honest.
Wow, interesting.
She can be won over in a day of compliments from this lady.
Yeah. First Harry, and then now tell him. So.
Not great. Not a great character trait.
Did you like the swearing in this scene? These fuckers.
I barely even noticed it. So that's good. That's good.
That's good. That is good. We've made progress.
Yeah.
So here's my tinfoil hat theory of the episode. Laurent, is he the brother of Markley, the guard in Day's Royal Guard?
No.
Okay.
Because Markley is not going to be a significant character, David, and I need you to accept it.
All right. We got a wager here. We got some internet points on the table. Let's go. Double or nothing.
This is not Star Wars where everyone's cousin or father or brother or sister or whatever.
And we all
else
end up back on Tatooine. And yeah. So, I'm going to hold on to that as a tinfoil hat theory.
Okay.
For sure.
All right.
I'm not even going to put it on the open list thing. It's just there. It's just in my pocket. I did want to call out one other thing, which goes back to one of the things that Goyer's doing with this episode when the casting is just getting a great diverse cast from all over the world and really excellent actors and whatnot. And then so when Laurent is commenting that he could feel the way that people would flinch when they saw Laurent, walking towards them. And it just really made me connect to this idea of, well, what if I was a physically large black man? Or what if I was somebody with a physical deformity or disability? And then every time I went out to get a coffee or walk down the street or catch the bus, people averted or flinched or crossed the street. I just really thought that this was a well-delivered line appropriately by this character, by this actor himself. I just thought it was this show doesn't delve too much into the real world stuff, but I just thought that this was just a nice little touch.
I'm just curious. Do you think he was referring more to his appearance, or was he referring more to the fact that he knew everybody's secrets and everybody knew that?
I think it was that the people would see him and they knew that he was different from them. Like, in his village or his town, it's like, oh, there's that dude that is.
He's a mind reader, and
yeah. He's a weirdo. He's a freak. He's not one of us. He's different in some way. And then because he could read emotions and minds, or to whatever degree his skills were at that time, he could connect to it and feel that.
Yeah,
palpably.
Because I do think that the show has intentionally avoided race politics by focusing on things like eye color.
Yep.
with Thespins and Anacreons. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't think they're avoiding the issues, but I think they're trying to remove it one level from the real world so that it's easier to talk about.
Which I totally agree, and because we see this really wide, diverse cast, and they're not going there with the things except in this one scene, and that's why I wanted to call it out, because I thought it did a nice double duty without like going off into a big segue and a big topic. So back in the village, boy, as I'm thinking about this, is a really densely packed show.
It is.
Like there's a lot happened in this episode.
Yeah.
Back in the village, Tellum boils up some ghost mollusks, and Salvor and Gaal can hear their pain, which prompts a conversation about how the sighted and the rest of humanity are different from each other, and how the sighted accept that suffering is the price of admission.
No one ever told Tellum about veganism, huh?
Well, she does mention that plants also release chemicals, and isn't that a scream? She does say that to Gaal when Gaal says, we'll stick to the plants.
Okay.
Their ability
I'm not sure if that's the same thing, but fine.
Their ability to ignore the suffering of others leaves room for excess, indulgence, conquest. We don't shy away from the pain we cause. We honor it. Little culty here. Little culty.
Yeah, you ever watch Documentary Now?
No.
There's a great episode called Batshit. I think it's like Batshit City or something like that, and it's all about Owen Wilson running a cult.
Oh gosh.
And he has this whole scene where he goes, "Now release yourself from all your fears and preconceptions. Drop pieces of paper with your relatives' names, phone numbers, social security numbers, and banking information into this bin." And that's what this feels like to me.
Yeah, very. I want to flag this whole thing about honoring the pain we cause for the final scene, because there's one little thing that I think they tie a nice little bow on this. Where are you at with this idea of, by our own very existence, we inherently cause suffering, and we consume resources, animals and plants, and is this something you think about, or is this something you tend to avoid thinking about? We don't have to get into
it's the circle of life. I did spend some time as a vegetarian and another portion of time as a vegan, and I have thought about these issues, and I'm at a point in my life where I don't think about them enough.
Okay.
Right. I don't know about you.
You're busy looking after your progeny.
Looking after my progeny and recording too many podcasts.
Far too many. Yeah, I think about it from time to time. I've been thinking a lot about environmental stuff recently, and with our changing climate and resource consumption and the sort of the nature and the fragility of our economy. And during the pandemic, it was interesting. Like, how far did we push our systems to breaking? And so I think I'm more thinking about that stuff than I am about consuming, meat and animals and that kind of stuff. So,
Well, it's also, all right, I'm not going to get into the merits of veganism, but I will say that cattle farming is one of the biggest sources of climate change ever.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's some of the reasons why we've made some changes in where we live and how we live, and is to try to, make choices about where we source our stuff so that they're not from big feedlots and things like that. Anyway, we're digressing pretty far here. Did you hear the diegetic music that was playing in the background where the kids were playing the little flutes and stuff?
Yeah. What about it?
I just was curious. Just curious as since you're a musician, if it spoke to you in any additional ways. It's used throughout the episode, and at the end during the credits they play it. So
I didn't get anything meaningful out of it. It was just, I think, a nice vibe.
On the home swarm, Hober tries unsuccessfully to negotiate with She Is Center, and we learn about the nature of the spacer servitude. The spacers reject the deal as Bell and Glaywin watch a bit of telly. They're then informed that She Bends Light has information from Siwenna. Glaywin asks if the Foundation might be growing brain tissue without a host, and She-Benz receives a message from her mom, and then the swarm jumps in. What did you make about the spacer servitude?
Well, do you think that we're going to meet She Rates Reviews on this podcast?
Well played.
You too could be a spacer.
Very good, John. That's hilarious. Well, they do have Opalesque, so as we know, he who controls the spice controls the universe. So a little bit more Dune crossover.
It is a bit Dune-y, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a little spicy over here.
And Talon using the voice, and
they are spooky looking. They are really spooky looking. Yeah. I'm looking at them, and I'm just it's that uncanny valley thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're just enough off and enough close to humans where my brain is telling me, oh, that's wrong. That's not okay. Yep.
Yeah. Big warning lights.
Yeah, I think they say that's because we evolved to see slightly off things as sick people and then avoid them.
Interesting.
And that's at least a leading theory on this. And they got something wrong with them. I can tell you that much.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that our brains are evolved to be able to read emotion and intent, and whether you're friend or foe by, the look of the eyes and the muscles in the face, and whether it's another mammal. That's why reptiles are so creepy, is because there's no emotional tells in the face of a reptile, a crocodile, a snake, or something like that. That's why it's creepy, because they're a blank to us.
There's also the biting part of crocodiles, but
besides that, right? So it turns out, this is an interesting thing. This drug, this Opalesque, which we again got from the closed captioning on the screeners, it turns out that when Bell was on that planet mining some mineral, it was not salt; it was Opalesque.
Okay.
And when in episode 3. When Bell shows up on the bridge of their ship, she bends light. They have a little banter back and forth, and she says to him, "All those years Opalesque mining, and you still only brought me remnants under your fingernails."
Ah, good catch there.
And he's kind of like, well, and I got this from Reddit. It's like there was something tingling, and so I was like, oh. And then I did a bunch of Googling, and I found a Reddit post on this. And then I went back and then verified it myself. And then she says to him, "Empire couldn't control my kind if they didn't keep a stranglehold on it," meaning it being the Opalesque.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I like this idea. What a shame that we have this failure of the spacers to take advantage of what does seem like a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah. And they run it through their galaxy brain and come up with a solution, come up with an answer that they don't have the tactical advantage in some way. So they decide not to. Yeah. So, but Hober has some good lines. He does try to sell. Like, I was convinced. I thought he was going to do it.
Yeah. He's a good salesman. Salesman. Again, we question, was he sent there to intentionally fail, or was he sent there thinking this guy's a good salesman? If anyone has a good shot to do this, then it's him.
And then what if he succeeded, or what if he failed? Are both of those outcomes accounted for within the predictive model of psychohistory? That's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, and I'm sure that we will get the answer to that one by the end of the season, probably.
So this whole thing about Hober being able to find them, that's a nice callback to Harry being able to predict the, where the swarm, the swarm says, she is center, says, "How did you find us? We don't, that's closely guarded stuff." And Harry predicted it, which is a nice call to him being able to predict the moon strikes and the Invictus, the pattern, the random patterns of the jumping. So that's all really a nice tied together piece there.
Right.
Because that's what he does, is patterning, right? He predicts patterns.
Yeah.
Seemingly random patterns, he can predict a logic to them.
Right. Especially swarms of people and animals.
So, two last notes from me on this scene. When Glaewyn and Belle are in bed, Glaewyn is looking at a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, that book that I talked about last time, which is a subpart of the Mahabharata, which is this giant Indian epic. Not going to go into it all in that moment, but they show us a shot of Glaewyn turning over the pages. And then when he turns the page, we get a clear shot of a scene where a blue-skinned figure is sort of ministering to a prostate figure, a figure that's sort of kneeling before them. And it was clear as day to me that this shot was there. And this is a picture of the god Vishnu ministering to Arjuna on the eve of battle. So he hasn't been in his god form prior to this. They've been talking, and he's been talking him through, like, do you really want to go to war? You're going to kill all your cousins. Yeah, you have to because of this, that, and the other thing. And then at one point, he turns himself into his god form, and Arjuna's like, whoa, like, I didn't know it was you, and, blah, blah, blah. And so he finishes sort of counseling him through this. So to me, again, it's a clear signal that they're using this story in some way. I don't know how they're going to use it, but it's there, very embedded.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I guess we know Glaewyn has been a little reflective this episode.
For sure. And then lastly, Glaewyn, when they are talking about Siwenna just before she bends, or before the swarm jumps in, Glaewyn posits that maybe the Foundation is growing brain tissue outside of a human host to be able to navigate jumps. So again, one of those little throwaway lines, just like the Opalesque mining, that, is there something?
I don't think they are. I don't think they are. It seems like they're doing it all with computers, right? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to wait for she subscribes to Patreon to tell us.
You're on fire tonight, John. This is good. I got no comebacks. You're funnier than I am. So.
That's all right.
All right. Back on Ignis, Gaal gives a rousing speech to the village about the mule, psychohistory, and the future, and what it'll take to prepare for that future.
Okay. Not a lot to say about this.
No, just a nice callback to the conversation about belief in the previous episode with Polly and Constant.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I will say that Gaal is certainly, I think that Salvor has read her completely when she says, maybe they can believe that and you'll be okay, but you can't believe that you're their savior.
Right, yes, yeah.
Or that's going to be a big problem, buddy. And
that's part of what Harry was building and, pointing at is like, she'll be fine as long as you're there for her. And then, that's really interesting, because at the end of this episode, Gaal doesn't have either of the two checks of her balance anymore.
Also, I don't think... Okay, so Harry is certainly possessing some narcissistic tendencies, I would say. However, I don't think he sees himself as a literal savior. I think he sees himself as someone who sees the full picture and would like to prod things along in the right way. Right. Now, maybe he gives himself too much credit, but I don't think that he sees himself as some kind of real religious icon.
Right. He uses the religious icon as a tool.
Sure.
And he understands that it's a tool.
And he didn't even put it in its place, right? He just said, "Oh, it looks like you've created a church. Okay, fine." He kind of just accepts that that's a natural progression. He doesn't fight it, and he doesn't put it into place.
Right.
Whereas Gaal is
you're in this phase.
Yeah. Whereas Gaal goes, on the third day I rose again. And she's just ready to be, she needs approval, right? I think Tellum really called her out on that.
That's true.
Now you have her getting approval from everyone in the village. And
she's getting
that's going to be a problem.
She's getting all gassed up by Tellum, right? She's really building her up. So.
Oh, Gaal is the problem. Gaal is the problem, everyone. Right in. All right, David, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll resume the episode.
Matthew McConaughey, when you're not playing the drums naked or filming car commercials, what do you do for fun?
I'll listen to Properly Howard, of course.
Properly Howard? What's that?
It sort of teleports you to a time of movie magic.
So this is a movie podcast.
Something like that, yeah. It's more than that, though. You know, the professor brings a little bit of that highbrow, and then the comedian brings a little bit of that lowbrow. What you get is a little thing called middlebrow, kind of like the Baby Bear podcast. It's just right, just right, just right.
Fantastic. So if you're looking for a decent film review podcast, come check out Anthony and Steve at Properly Howard, wherever you get your quality podcasts.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mr. McConaughey was voiced by stand-up comic Steve Osborne, but in all likelihood does represent the views of actor Matthew McConaughey.
And we're back, and hopefully not messianic anymore. David, where are we at?
On the home swarm, mother and daughter greet each other. Hober tries to make a play and is beat down, but always a few steps ahead. He's able to outwit the Empire and the Spacers and jump away.
Yeah, I like the scene. It was, I like that he could not fight off the two of them, but he outsmarted them with Becky.
Yeah.
That was a very Hober way to get out of there.
Well, and he intentionally, the way that I read it after watching it the second time was that was all a play. He knew he was going to get his ass handed to him. And he wanted to lull them into that false sense of, okay, you got me. All right. I've had enough pain. Whatever. Here you go. And then, boom. So beautiful. Long gone.
Pretend he's beaten. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. It's like his whole deal with switching bodies with the ruler of the city. Yeah.
Really clever stuff. I loved this point of she is center saying, Belle's like, oh, well, thanks for coming to check us out. And she's like, boy, I wanted to see my daughter.
Right.
I got this jackass in tow. Fine, I'm going to hand him over to you. But really, I wanted to be here with my little girl. And I love that even though the Spacers are in this visibly uncanny valley, as you say, that's a very human motive. That is a very, very deeply seated human motive.
And you have to ask yourself, if Hober had happened to treat with someone who didn't have a child taken for the tithe, who didn't have a child in Empire's custody, would he have successfully pitched?
Whew. Yeah.
Because you have
really good question.
You have the Free Spacers fight Empire. She has a chance of killing her own daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a deal breaker for her. And I don't blame her. I don't blame her. I have kids. I probably would make a similar decision in this case of, well, but I know my kid's alive, right?
And did Harry know, how much did Harry know about the Spacer servitude and the tithing, the 10% tithing and how,
well, Hober even knew about the tithing. I'm sure Harry knew about the tithing.
No, did he know? I don't think he knew about it before Harry told him. So then I think that answers the question is that Harry, Dr. Selden,
right.
Dr. Selden in the vault, right? The edited memory of Selden.
Right.
Probably briefed Hober on what was going on because he had to know to understand for his negotiations.
Right. I wonder why he didn't put himself into Hober's head. Just say, because Harry's a pretty good salesman himself. I mean, he's very good at explaining these things. Look at how he presented the mule to the Mentalics. He did a pretty good job there. I don't know. Was Hober the right choice for this? Because I kind of feel like she as setter didn't take him that seriously.
Well, maybe the whole gambit was designed to fail anyway.
Fair enough.
That's the flip of the coin that we don't know, right? We don't know if it was.
Well, if the Mentalics would stop interfering with our corn flips, then maybe we could know.
Right. Maybe the point is to Empire to find out that they tried to flip the Spacers, and then that enrages Empire, and then they make a strategic blunder because they're so pissed off.
I could see that.
It's a
goad. He's playing 5D chess.
Totally, he's playing seriously. This is the episode, or the first time in the episode where I got worried that somebody was going to die, and I thought Glaywin was going to get bit by Becky here. I thought Becky.
Yeah, I thought it was very possible.
Yeah, so and that's when, for the tension for the rest of the episode, I really started to get ramped up and like, oh yeah, somebody's going to die in this episode.
And they did. Maybe
they did. All right. Bell briefs Day and Demerzel, and Day worries if Foundation had sent the blind angel assassins. Day cuts communications, and Glaywin and Bell argue about their situation. Bell worries about a lawless future if Empire fails, and Glaywin and Bell reconnect over Bell's sense of humanity.
Yeah, I do enjoy that Glaywin was almost testing Bell to see if he still had emotions after his long away, because that was almost something that I was bothered by in the episode where they're reunited. Was it just seemed like they like picked up right where they left off, and I don't know if that's really how that would go down after, what was it, 10 years?
Was it something like, something like that? Yeah.
It was a long time. It was a
time.
significant amount of time. Thought his husband was dead. And they pick up without much of a beat missed. And there's like one, I think, little, well, are you sure you want to do this when they first go back into service? But that's really it. And they seem to not argue that much since. This was a great sort of look into how Glaywin's feeling, which I didn't think we got before this.
The weak are objects, the rapists are king, the poor are slaves, and life is nothing but emptiness and pain.
Well, I didn't know you were a poet, Bell.
So it was, as you say, it's a really nice validation and reaffirmation of their relationship. I think there's even people who were speculating, like, why isn't Glaywin a secret agent for Empire? They had, 7 years or 10 years or whatever it was to break him and to like turn him into a double agent or clone his ass and make him a Total Recall, storyline here. So I don't know. It was really nice. On the topic of serving in the military with your spouse, and maybe, that's not a great idea. Well, there's actually human history precedent, on Earth Prime here, precedent for this. And it was on the Bald Move podcast with Goyer, their interview with Goyer. They talk about this, the Sacred Band of Thebes, where there was 150 pairs of male lovers who were like the special forces of their army, and they would go off on these crazy missions. And this idea that you would, you're going to fight harder because your loved one is standing beside you, and that you're all sort of bonded into this special unit with this high esprit de corps because it's spouses, right? So it just goes in this idea that human history is just so rich and interesting, and you don't have to look very far to come up with interesting storylines.
That was Tony Gilroy, right? Stop looking for stories in the future, look for it in the past.
Right, exactly. This just going back quickly, and we talked about this at the top of the episode. In my, again, very very light theorizing here. Did the Sighted have something to do with the blind angel assassins? Because they clearly mention this word psycho encryption. And as far as we know, the Foundation doesn't have, all of their efforts have been going into preparing for war with ships and guns and that kind of stuff. Whereas the Sighted have the mental powers. So... And Dominion has some mental powers, but it's maybe it just feels like it's about the memory stuff and really centered around Rue's ability or experiences and what they learned.
Right.
So did Tellum send the assassins? Maybe not, but did they have some part in the technology, quote unquote technology, that allows the blind assassins to? Well, here's something too. If they're blind, right? They showed them they don't have eyes. They have to have other senses. Right. So that kind of strengthens my theory a little bit even more.
Sure.
That Tellum was involved.
Are they metallics?
If Markley is Laurent's brother or related. So, a lot of questions. I'm doubling down on this theory. I'm doubling down hard. So,
but would Markley not be able to find anything if that were the case, or would he have at least something to offer Sareth so that he got better pay? Hey, bro, you know what? I need some intel on this so that I can get paid by Dominion.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like my brother, I would give him some more details.
Well, he's still got to operate within the confines and circumstances of the Empire as it is, within the palace as it is. So, yeah, I don't know. there's still more to figure out there, but I think there might be a connection. Because if Tellum has a inside play, somebody on the inside in Empire, and she wants to she doesn't care a fig for the rest of humanity, right? She wants to collect all of her sighted on her planet. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something there.
Right. Okay.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Day and Sareth meet in the garden where Day makes overtures. Sareth reminds Day that her dead family will now be his dead family.
I love that.
Day forces Sareth's obedience, and Sareth makes plans to meet with Dawn.
Boy, this was a rough scene to watch. Yeah, I mean, Sareth is really just letting it all go out in the open now. She's lost a little bit of the subtlety that she had.
This whole recounting of her family, her gentle father, and her.
Hey, you know how I have dead family? You know my dead family that's now your dead family? How do you feel about dead family, Day?
And then one of the extraordinary things for me in this is when he forces her to say, "I am grateful, Empire." And it really this whole scene demonstrates how weak this Day is. He's a weak man who is in way over his head, and he's not capable of rule.
He needs constant reaffirmation.
Yeah. And he has to power play. He has to just knuckle down on these people to get him to fall in line and to be obedient.
Right.
So,
yikes.
This chemistry between Lee Pace and Ella Ray Smith is so good. And when she's like talking about her family, and he's like, "How nice," and this little eye flick he does when he looks away, and he's just sort of discomforted. It's so good. The acting is just brilliant in this show. I'm loving it.
Yeah, she's a very good facial actor.
Yeah,
she's very good at portraying different things. So she's done a lot of like smirking and very like sure of herself kind of things in most of these episodes, and we can see that mask slipping a little bit because I think she is, like many people, a complicated character, and she is practiced now in manipulating politics to get what she needs, but she also is still someone who is scared to be in a world where she's lost a lot of her autonomy.
Right.
And that's a very complicated set of emotions to hold within one head.
And she's playing big stakes here. This is
right. It's the Game of Thrones.
Her life. It really is. It really is. Is this
the Game of Clones? Sorry.
You need a "she is" line here for that. Is this the same spot that Day confronted the gardener Azura in season 1? Where he says, "I'm gonna."
It's his favorite. It's his favorite ball dropping.
That's right.
Spot.
But it was interesting too because at the beginning of the scene, he's trying to make overtures and like play nice, and you're going to be my wife, so I've stopped fucking my robot. Pardon my French. I don't mean to be crass, but like he's like, "Look, I'm going to be a good husband to you," and she's like, "You murdered my family, you monster."
Right. Yeah. Imagine you're a servant in Day's, his group of servants, and he says, "Listen, Chuck." My servant Chuck, that's a name that you'd find in this series. "I need to see you at 5 on that bench in the garden." I'm not going to that. I'm fleeing the planet as soon as I can.
You're done. It's over. All right. In the tunnels under the city, a disguised Sareth and Dawn meet. Sareth confides that her family was killed, in fact, by Empire, and Sareth proposes that Dawn could sire their children, not Day. Sareth gives Day the pilfered medical device to reverse his sterility.
Yeah, the can opener. What do you do with that? I need to know now.
They intentionally made it to look terrifying like that. They kiss. This is suicide. No, this is a bloodless fucking coup.
Don't they have like a museum in London where they have torture devices or something like that?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there's plenty in.
This belongs in there.
Dental
Are we
museums.
kidding? Are we kidding? No, get that away from my private parts.
I want to talk to the production designer. I want to see how much fun they had actually designing this thing.
I need to know what is this? What is the intention behind this? Because I am bothered by it.
What did the doctor say too? Like the nanobots will like eat through and bore out a new vas differens or something like that.
I don't like that. I don't like it.
Nanobots.
Shut it down.
Really trippy starting of the scene. This sort of 360, or I think it was a 180 camera spin in the tunnel. It sort of twisted, and it was really bizarre. And then I noted that we learn a bunch of stuff. We learn that all the Cleons, when they're 17, they get to go on the grand tour of Trantor and go to all the different districts. And which he then tells us that the oculi don't work in the heat sinks so that they're safe. The oculi being the ever-present panopticon machinery, right, to watch everything. Right. That this is when we're introduced to face scrambler technology, which is not dissimilar to the stuff that Harry is using with his
exactly. Yeah. Although his is a little junkier.
Yeah, definitely. And then we get this that the Dawns are all warned about the one Dawn who tried to escape, and how that didn't go so very good. So we learn a whole bunch. They dump a lot of lore in this little scene. So speaking of swirling test tubes, and who's going to sire whose children,
what year do you think that KitchenAid gets into sterility treatment?
Oh, I know. I got you. Yeah, soon. It's not long. They need to vertically stack into the medical industry, device industry. This whole thing with Dawn siring the children. This reminded me of something. Again, just look into our own histories onto our own planet for interesting stuff. There's a species of cuttlefish where a male will defend like a harem, like he'll have like maybe 2 or 3 females, a big one, right? He'll defend, he'll try to collect up several females and defend. Well, what smaller males will do is they will, because the cuttlefish can change its form and color, a small male cuttlefish will then make itself look like a female, get into the harem, and then mate with the other females behind the big male's back and then take off.
Whoa.
And so I was like, oh, this is totally cool. This is, Dawn, sneaking in behind the big stallion's harem and dropping some seeds. So, or not fertilizing some seed, I should say. So
I think it's more like when you seed a lawn and you're pushing a wheelbarrow of seed over it. It's less voluntary. It does not seem like Dawn wants to get involved with this drama.
No.
No. I have advice for you, Dawn. Never promise crazy a baby. That's an Arrested Development line, if anybody recognized that. But
it's a piece of truth, though, right? It's an absolute piece of truth.
I think this is a bad move for you, Dawn. I really
Very
do.
Bad. Very bad. Couple of more notes here. Sereth, I love how she's appealing to his sense of legacy. And a couple of episodes back, when Dusk and Dawn are talking while they're waiting in the memoriam, waiting for the memory files to come up, Dusk says it's not about what you remember, but how you're remembered. So in this scene, Sereth is really appealing to his legacy and to this idea that he's going to soon be cut off and not have not be the one true heir. So I thought that was really interesting. And then that goes into this whole question of sterility and genetic lineage and what makes us human. The spacers, right? They're human. They have children. They procreate. They have human motivations. And then we have another character out there, that may not be. So
Right. Interesting. I like all this philosophy coming in.
Yeah. All right, Constance and Polly under very heavy guard.
Again, Why?
Well, for the end of the scene is why. because I think it's because they detected the double brain pattern. So they were,
Okay.
they're being super cautious. That's the way I read it.
Hmm.
Anyway, they're brought before Cleon and they present him with a gift. Polly offers an alliance and peace with Foundation. Dr. Selden makes an appearance to underline the words of his cleric. But the girl, she looks like she's got something on her mind. When will we learn to doubt when a thespian comes bearing a gift? Both a couple of just brilliantly delivered lines.
Yeah, I get Lee Pace. How much more can we say about him? He's a great actor. We like him.
So good. Do you need? Maybe we should start selling atomic ashtrays in our merch store when we.
I'm not selling any ashtrays. No ashtrays coming from Lorehounds Central.
So somebody who's a book reader has to comment on this. Is there atomic ashtrays in the books? Is this something that they lifted? Because certainly, I don't know. You remember you read their first book. It felt very like they're smoking pipes and have.
So we have a foundation. Yeah, you hear, old sport.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of deal. It was halfway to The Great Gatsby. Atomic ashtray. I loved Cleon's reaction to this when he goes, "Oh, absurd," and he just immediately just is like, "All right, whatever, you weirdos."
What the hell's going on? So Polly, she doesn't take a knee, and then she says, "Should I speak first or should you?" Boom, callback, season 1, when Harry gets called before Cleon at the trial. Mm-hmm. That's what Harry says.
Oh, really?
Yes. So.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
And this is before we know that Cleon, or before we know that Polly has Spock's brain. Harry's brain on her. This is a very Star Trek Search for Spock. Spock puts his consciousness in Dr. McCoy. And then when they find Spock's body, he's able to reunite his body and with his mind. Great stuff. Goyer, I think he's a big nerd. So I don't think he had to know what he was doing here with this.
That's fun. Do you know, I tried watching the original series. I actually got pretty into it.
Okay.
And my daughter, when she was 1 year old, I was into this. And she would stare at the screen in amazement whenever Spock came on screen. Nice. I don't know what it was, but anytime Spock came on, didn't matter if she saw anybody else. Spock, I got to stare at the screen right now.
Oh, you should show her Spock again. Maybe get a Spock poster or screensaver or something
to watch over her as she sleeps. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Put a little Spock poster in there. So, this scene. Jiraj Varasani, the actor who plays Polly, he was on fire this scene. It was so great. It was so great to see him stretching out and playing with the salesmanship thing and, offering peace. I just really loved it.
Yeah, he was really great. I liked how he sort of didn't know how to approach it first, but he got more comfortable the more he talked.
Yeah.
I think he needed Constant there to be like, all right, it's an ashtray. Can we move on?
Yeah. So did you notice that Day has a different breastplate and he's wearing a slightly different outfit than in previous ones?
I didn't, but I'm sure you're about to tell me.
Well, yeah, it just goes like with this earring and his floppy hair and like this whole Day is just rocking a whole different vibe.
Imagine you just said to me, actually, it was the same outfit. Trick question.
No trick question.
That's cool. This is rock and roll Day. He's
totally.
He's very. He's almost got like an 80s hairstyle, a 70s maybe. I don't know, but it's very laid back. He's
cool.
I'm cool Day. I'm a cool.
He's
dad.
Cool Day. He's very cool Day. And then I think we talked about this earlier. There's just that whole buildup of Constance. Having this dual brain thing and all the little funny lines she's saying. So it caught me. I was taken. I was hoodwinked. So.
All right. Fair enough. Do you think that Harry's plan is a good one to go there and dare Day?
I think
to fight him.
As we're talking about this and talking it through a little bit more, I think the whole point of both the spacer maneuver and this is to goad. The whole point is to goad Foundation into rash action.
Okay.
And to jump the gun and to just try to get up in Foundation's face before they're really ready to.
Right.
They're taunting. They're taunting Foundation. This is just a giant taunt. So.
It's very strange, though, for Harry to tell the warmongers on Terminus, no, we're definitely not fighting. We're going to make peace. But then send the peaceful people to go start a war.
So then maybe when the peaceful, well, with the Foundation, when they're like, oh, well, okay, maybe we'll chill out a second. And then, oh, nope, here they come. Like it's like he's goading both sides in a way.
But is he making the Foundation less prepared because they're less likely now to establish military bases and to build up forces now that they know that that's not the plan?
It's so short. It's such a, they've already done all the prep that they can do at this stage. And at this stage, there's no more big strategic moves.
But they're talking about, can we set up more bases on planets? Like there's always more you could do to be prepared for military action, right?
That's in a time span of like decades. And I think we're in a time span of less than a year here.
Right.
This is tactical maneuvering now.
Right.
So
I
think it may be a kind of surprise attack. Whoa, suddenly Foundation's on our doorstep. Well, F them, like, let's go, boys. And, then they get all rallied. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure we'll see in the next couple episodes.
All right. Fair enough.
This is the second time when I was worried that we were going to lose a character. And I thought we were
I thought Constance was dead.
Yeah. So
I thought she was dead. And I liked her a lot. I think she's pretty funny.
I was very dubious of the Drunk and the Monk when we first met them in episode 1, and I really do not want to not have these characters.
They've got good chemistry. I do think we're due for a time jump at some point before next season, and we will end up losing a lot of these new characters. I think that this show is it can either go one or two ways. We can spend a couple seasons with these people, or we're going to jump forward and lose all of our side characters from this season.
Which is going to be tough because that's one of the unfilmable aspects of the Foundation books is that they leap so far ahead that every time you go to a new book, you don't have any of the same old characters and you're starting all over again. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Last note on this scene is just this eyes of a Thespin, right? Day gets up into Constance's face and says the line about the eyes. And so, I don't know I don't know what that's all about, and I don't know if it has to do anything with the mule, but it's there.
Well, wasn't there that? I know that was the Anacreons mostly, but weren't the Thespins involved with the whole Anacreon thing when they had the Sky Bridge?
Yeah. They were all set up for that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Yeah, well, no, for sure. That's exactly what's going on. It's just, does the blue eyes have anything to do with the mule later on? That's the question.
Good question. Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap it up. On Ignis, Salvor attempts to solve the mystery of the boat. She's confronted by Gaal and they argue. They're seen by Laurent and Gaal pulls rank. Later that night, Salvor sneaks out and steals the boat and discovers Harry's body. She's confronted by Tellum, who unthinks her life. Sometimes a little death is necessary.
I like how you put that there. She unthinks her life.
I was trying to describe. She murders
just powers
her,
her down.
she shoots her. Like, yeah. And did you notice she does the little finger thing, just like Empire does? She's like, boop.
Yeah.
So,
although I think hers is doing it more directly than Empire.
Yeah. It's Tellum, right? So,
yeah.
And that's a question. Did Tellum? Is Tellum that powerful that she can just murder somebody with her mind? There was
I don't think she murdered her. I thought she put her to sleep so that she would drown.
That's the question I had. That's exactly the question. Is it?
That's how I read it. Out? That's how I read it.
Okay,
is knock her out while she's in the water. She'll drown.
Okay, got it. Because she's just they go into that drone shot overhead and she's just there floating face down. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So remember what I said earlier in that scene about them in the village and they were boiling the ghost mollusks and talking about, pain. Do we honor pain? Because we cause pain by just being existing. But the difference between us and the rest of humanity is we honor it. Dude next to Tellum, there's two guys on either side of her.
Yeah. They
cut to him really quick and one of those guys and he's crying. He's doing the whole like crying thing. So like he's crying for Salvor knowing that she's going to get murdered here. And I was like, oh boy, this is like seriously culty. This is way off base here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great. I'm really wondering if anyone's going to have enough of what Tellum's doing.
Right.
But maybe Josiah. We have hope for him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Gail's going to do it. I think Gail is kind of in the cult now.
I'm
High
totally
up in the cult.
I'm totally stumped where the story's going to go now. They've taken Salvor and Harry off. I'm like, at least one of the Harrys we have. And how many times can we bring Harry back like that without getting ridiculous, without jumping the shark? So.
Right. Well, I think
stumped.
there's a strong possibility that he will respawn on Una's world, and Kale will just be like, "The fuck, man! I just gave you a new body. Now I got to do it again."
And then he's got to go all the way back to Ignis, and he's got to find the spot so he can pick up all his gear and hope nobody looted his gear while his body was laying there.
Right. Yeah, these spawn points are not generous in this game.
It was nice that this is where we got the episode title. This is where Tellum says, that sometimes a little death is necessary. So I always like it when they do that little connectivity stuff. And the scene when they're on the beach, when Gaal and Salvor are on the beach, just beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous light. They're on location. The wind is blowing. They're actually on the surf. And you cannot do that on a soundstage, right? So that they're actually out in the world. And then there's this point where Salvor is in the light and Gaal is in shadow, and then later Gale's in light and shadow. So they're playing with that visual language of, motivations and stuff. So it's just all really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
One more little comment too was Salvor comments that growing up she was always called special, and it really messed with her, messed with her head, and that just reminded me of that line that Tellum says a couple of like, "Don't worship children; it's not good for them."
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, kids need a normal growing up. That's the whole point of Harry Potter. You let him grow up under the cupboard in an abusive household, and he'll just be better. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know what the point was with that, Joanne, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the episode. That's the scene.
Yeah. Good episode.
As far as we know, Harry is dead and Salvor is dead. Are they really dead? I've been so trained by shows to have our main characters crawl out from underneath the dumpster in the next episode. So
I think it's mostly been a Game of Thrones issue, although I've heard Walking Dead was just as bad with it.
Yeah, well, that's the reference is Glenn, one of the characters climbing out.
Okay.
Yeah, they totally show us like, he's dead. And then the next episode, he crawls out from under a dumpster. So, all right. As a reminder, send us feedback, empire@thelorehounds.com. Or head over to our website, thelorehounds.com, and there you can use a voicemail feature or use a contact form. Just send us a note. As well, we have our Discord server, which you can post messages. Lots of folks chatting about things, theorizing, posting pictures, or having fun. And sometimes we'll go in there and scoop up a comment or two. John, would you do the honors?
Absolutely. First up, we have Marilyn Arpakila, our favorite Tolkien scholar. She says, "Hello, Lorehounds. How in the world do these episodes keep getting better and better?
Right?
Not through the use of AI, that's for sure. I should mention that these are all from after episode 6. So we are talking, these people are talking about episode 6. We're recording this for screeners, so 7 has not aired yet." She continues, "May I say I really like John's Josiah theory." Hey, thanks, Marilyn. Once again, they're weaving in so many of the ancient stories and tales so that even if we don't know them by name or synopsis, there's still enough of them in our cultural background that they sort of tug at us and sound familiar. And they certainly have been focusing on this one kid out of all the other cited ones. I really hope that he doesn't turn into the mule. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Marilyn, is that even if it's not something that you know about explicitly, it's sort of in the soup of humanity.
Yeah.
She continues, "Tellum's level of untrustworthiness makes Harry look like a kindergarten teacher. Her so-called open-handedness is usually a screen for the real intention, and she could give Harry lessons in manipulation. If they're not careful, they're going to turn her into an unbeatable foe whose skills and abilities are so far beyond anyone else's that no one can overcome her because no one can tell what is and isn't real anymore, nor can they keep their thoughts from her. Gaal may be strong in her abilities, but she has no training in them. And I'm not sure she'll ever be able to grow into them successfully in a world that Tellum rules." Totally agree. Tellum is very scary right now, and I'm hoping that they figure out a way to defeat her. We will see. but she really needs to get defeated.
Could you imagine if Harry had any mental abilities at reading people? Boy, he would have been a scary mofo too. So I think Tellum may not have the mathematics, but she has, I love a good evil villain in a show where their motivations are very rooted and grounded and you can relate to them. Right. She's just trying to protect these people who are outcasts of society. And that's a relatable goal. But damn, right. She is a monster in her own rights in the ends that she will pursue to justify her means or the means. Whatever. You know what I mean? Means justifying ends.
Yeah. Something I will point out that I just realized is last episode, she was very clear. This isn't murder. I would never kill one of our own. Well,
you
go. You just did.
Right. Yes. Didn't think about that.
Self-confessed murderer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The rules bend whenever you want them to, huh?
That's
Tell
right.
them.
What is it? For my friends, everything. For everyone else, the law. Or just this idea that we'll bend and manipulate whatever sociological structures there are, so that our core group has the integrity, and the rest of you can F off.
Right. All right. She says regarding Polly and Constant and their approaches to Harry Seldon, what Polly has is experience. He shook Harry's hand with echoes of Jesus's first post-resurrection appearance to the doubting Thomas, who had to actually touch Jesus's body to determine that he was real. By contrast, Constant has belief, and she lived and acted upon it until she felt Harry's hands on her head, offering her a blessing. Well, we know now he offered her more than that. Her first experience of the one that she had believed in her whole life. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. I think that's one of the Beatitudes, if I'm remembering correctly. She also had faith in Harry and the plan, i.e. she trusted both of them. I think Polly's faith/trust never as great as Constance was shaken when the warden was fried. I also think he's somewhat humbled by Constance's approach, and while he has experienced Harry, I'm not sure how much faith he has ever had in him. It seems to me that belief in something simply means you believe in its factual existence because you've experienced it, but that doesn't mean you have faith in it. Okay, that's a good distinction. This is I believe in something factually. I don't worship the Big Bang, but I believe in it factually. Although I think that didn't a scientist recently challenge that? Anyway, doesn't matter. You get what I mean.
Yeah, it's this really great question that the show has opened up about this thing between faith and belief. And there's a lot in our modern age that we believe in, and there's very little that I'm trying to think of what I have faith in versus belief. I mean, I believe when I get on the airplane, it's going to fly. I believe that, when I open my phone and I've got whatever notifications that the electrons zipped and zapped and zooped across the world. And, I'm talking to somebody real. But what do I have faith in? I don't know what I have faith in right now.
I have faith that I'm tired, so I'm going to continue this. I'm very sorry, Marilyn says.
No more philosophical. Move on, David. Move on.
Marilyn continues, I'm very sorry. Quantum physics is not in my wheelhouse. I will have to leave that to other listeners to address. However, I did ride horses for a few years, and one of the things I was told was that horses will always avoid stepping on anything if they can possibly help it, because their feet are only defense. Run away, and are easily damaged.
Interesting.
I don't know if the showrunners were extending that same tendency to moonstrikes or not, but that's what it reminded me of when I watched Harry standing stone still as the herd streamed past him. Perhaps he simply observed the pattern that they never stepped on anything if they could avoid it. Since both Tolkien and C.S. Lewis hated sci-fi literature, which talked too much about how the tech works, I don't think they would have cared that much for the finer details of things like the composition of the vault or the structure of the spacers' hives or how Foundation jump tech works either. Yeah, I think this is in response to something that we talked about last episode, which was sort of a comparison between The Expanse and this, whereas the Expanse is really
right.
interested in details like that, scientific details. Foundation is more big ideas. What if tech could do this?
Right. Thought experiment stuff. Yeah.
Right. And when I say Sareth and Day deserve each other, I mean that they are equally manipulative and equally ruthless in obtaining their ends. Whatever you may think about those ends, morally or otherwise, they certainly feel that their any means, are justified by them. I don't know. I haven't seen Sareth kill anybody yet.
Not yet.
For it.
Not yet.
I mean, it's a bloodless coup that she's
right.
interested
That's
in.
true. That's true. Would she go there if she needed to go there?
Yeah. Can't wait till next Friday, she says, and then she has two PSs. The first one says, the one thing about quantum physics that I do understand intuitively is to observe a thing is to change it. What this has to do with superpositioning and at least 2 prime radiants. The third one on Una's world is the woman who claimed to be the prime radiant, as I see it, existing at the same time in different places. I can't tell you. What a crazy statement, right?
Yeah. And I don't know that there's a third, we don't know what the Calais figure is on Una's world. So how
I think that's
relates.
a robot. I'm still convinced that's a robot.
I'm more in line that it's something along those lines and not necessarily connect. I think the Prime Radiant was taking on different guises to speak to Harry to try to coax him along. I don't know that it's actually Calais in there. But there was something earlier that I was wanted to say. There are multiple instances in this episode where either Dawn or Day, both of them say this. I studied when Dawn tried to escape, or Day says, "Oh, I studied you, Harry." When he's there, and so that goes into it. Really made me think of this whole observer effect of like, oh, well, I'm aware of this thing. I'm aware that this effect is in play in here. And then how does that change the calculations of how you might respond or react to something? So,
right. Yeah. Good question. Was Harry dead before before Salvor found him? Or was he
did you open the box?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's the cat. All right. Duve71 Lore Master writes in via email. Hi, John and David. Well, that was indeed a very dense episode. I think this episode of the pod is a great example of how a deep dive discussion of a series of like Foundation enhances the experience of watching a show. Well, thanks, Duve.
Indeed. That's what we're here for.
He says, after watching the ep and listening to the pod, I have some musings. The fact that it was dropped casually that the mule is a mentalic led me on a headcanon theory that Josiah is the mule. John's point about the biblical connection of the name and a righteous king reinforced this thinking, as we know how someone who has trauma like Josiah can lead to zealotry and atrocities, all in the name of a righteous cause. The only wrinkle in that idea is David's comment about the mule and the book. Yeah, and I would say the other wrinkle is just the mule needed to know where Ignis is. If it's Josiah, why? Was his memory wiped or something? I guess there are ways to get around that, but I don't know if I would like them.
Did they leave and they're not on Ignis anymore? And, this is 152 years in the future or whatever?
No, because remember...
he's trying to find him in the present.
They only found Ignis because... that was where the mule was looking for, and Harry had Gaal look in her mind for where that actually was. So wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Yeah. Duve continues, John, but I'm sorry, but this is a Gen Z versus X divide. How dare you, Duve? I'm a millennial. Pride on the millennials. Divide on close encounters effects. I enter into the case. For my defense, my Gen Z daughter, who has a visceral dislike of movies and TV shows over 10 to 15 years old due to production values and visual effects. She loves Close Encounters and commented on how great the effects were. She was blown away when I said it in 1976. This is a hill I shall die on, John. Dude, I want to be clear. I've not watched this. I have no idea what it looks like. I was just poking fun at David. Maybe I will watch it one day. Maybe that'll be on an old man movie. And I don't have a visceral dislike of old movies. My grandpa used to show me Abbott and Costello movies when I was a kid. I used to watch plenty of old movies. I just was having fun on the podcast. Don't take everything I say so seriously. That's my advice. Yeah. This series is tackling the really big issues with a heck of a lot of religious allegory going on. Some examples I previously mentioned on Discord about the on-the-nose Christian connections, Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita, yep.
Abrahamic, etc. Vault Harry looks like the Old Testament, Yahweh-style God. We then have the Reborn Harry, who himself keeps mentioning that the Foundation 1 and 2 needs a Messiah-like figure. But the show seems to hint Gaal could be a Messiah-like figure for the Mentalics. Even Demerzel could be for the Machines. Lots of false dragons being set up, crossing the
Nice
streams
play.
on product, yeah.
Nice.
That's before we got into the whole spacer combination of human and machine, Foundation's Borg, hive mind without the S&M fascism. I'm not sure what this is. Is this something from the books?
Yeah, the Borg in science in Star Trek, and you had to see a couple of movies to get into their S&M.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Season 1 seemed to build up Harry's academic arrogance in terms of psychohistory and the fall of Empire. In this episode, we see that Harry has serious beef with Empire, with skin in the game. This highlights the really interesting link between Harry and the episode title. Final comment, I love this version of Dusk, bone dry and icing some hilarious side-eye during Dave's massively underwhelming speech. Keep on keeping on. Thanks, Stu. This was a fun piece of feedback. This got me thinking about a lot of stuff with the Messiah theories. I think, I listened to the Dune podcast for Properly Howard today, so the Messiah is on the mind. And, I'm not sure where we're going with it.
All this religious I can't say it now. Iconography, thank you. All of this stuff, this is what writers do, right? They build these parallels, they do these twinnings, they create these visual homages to things. This is what good writing is about. And I just really wish the studios would get off their damn nut about this and let these writers do the work, because this is fabulous stuff. This is product. This is a show that's going to stand up over time, and it's going to be more interesting. And just like anyway. But yes, I love all the visual imagery that you're referring to here with religious, all these different religious figures running around the show.
David, I just got an email from Bob Iger. He wants to meet with you on Dave's bench in about 10 minutes.
Can I bring the little nanobot can opener thing with me?
Dave's purge bench. That's what I'm going to call it. Well, thanks, Stu. That was fun.
Thanks, Stu.
We got a couple more. Brian8063 on Discord. Loremaster, Brian8063, says, episode 6, this was all way in the weeds, but one thing that caught my attention is that Empire owns all faculty work. As someone who works at a university, this is becoming more of a reality. There has been a pretty long debate about copyright and intellectual property with faculty and administrators. In the private sector, this is also an issue. Harry is forced into a situation where he puts his work under the radar as much as possible.
Yeah, everybody wants a bite of that sweet IP, right? You want to be able to, make money off of these intellectual products.
Well, we just brought up the writer's strike. I was listening to a really interesting conversation with Adam McKay on the A More Civilized Age podcast. Adam McKay did Adam Ruins Everything, if you knew that true TV show. And he had a point that writers for TV actually gave up their IP rights in the writing and gave them to the studios in exchange for royalties, in exchange for these percentage of profits, percentage of the money made. And that's why it's such a big issue that they're refusing to do this for things like streaming. And everybody wants the IP, right? Because at one point somebody said no to George Lucas with Star Wars, and now George Lucas owned that and got to sell it to Disney instead of a studio owning that, right?
Right. And George Lucas, I think, famously created the toygenic market, right? He had a piece of the action figures and all of the merch that came out of the movies, and which made him crazy wealthy. And then everybody was like, "Oh, dude, like we could do that?"
Right.
So yeah,
get me Robert Downey Jr. They said. Yeah. Cast of Troy on Discord says, this wasn't my favorite episode, but upon watching it again, it showed so many interactions and setups. I liked it more and more. But I think that I will write an email, as I have so much to say here. I will say Vault Harry / Harry is a narcissist and a monster by sending a young, naive girl and Polly, who's a mess, to their deaths. Dawn was staring at Sareth, who I think might have been a better choice to gain power and end the dynasty. But she went for the jugular and weakness, i.e. Day. Dawn was trying to figure out what she was about to do, and Dusk had a small smile and thinking, "You fool, you just got played," as Demerzel touched her salt charm on her bracelet. Well, you didn't get around to writing it on email, Cass, but we appreciate your Discord message anyway, because this is some good stuff. That scene with the speech was really delicious.
It was great.
Really great.
I don't even know that Day, was she expected to give a speech, or did she just jump into the spotlight and start talking? Because when Day looks over his shoulder at her, he's like, whoa, wait, what is she doing? And then she goes really far with it too. It's not even like,
Right,
oh, my loyal
right.
subjects, I'm so happy to be your empress. She went like, yo, we got your back, people,
Right.
bring it. Yeah. And then
she was all like, smash the bourgeoisie all of a sudden, It's,
here's all the cake. help yourself. And then Demerzel touching her little salt charm. We have not heard anything about the triple goddesses this whole season. So I wonder how that's going to play out in the future, and what
they're now just the double goddesses. One of them went solo.
got signed with a different record label. And,
It's true. Yeah.
And that's a good question. Demerzel's faith. When we get into this whole belief versus faith thing, is as a robot, can she have faith?
Well, didn't she experience the vision that Day didn't? That day didn't?
Right. Exactly.
So is that belief because she experienced it, or is it faith? I don't know.
I don't know. We got to end this podcast tonight because it's too late to be getting into these deep philosophic conversations. So,
well, thanks again, Cass, and to everybody who wrote in, because it's always more fun when we can have conversations with the listeners. Again, you can send this to empire@thelorehounds.com. Go to our website, thelorehounds.com, or you can head on our Discord and we'll pull some of those. David, time for an outro.
We should run this real quick, but yes, we have to talk about our affiliates who are our dear friends who podcast alongside of us. Properly Howard Film Review just released their Dune episode. They're doing remakes this season of their movie reviews. Check that on the feeds right now. You, John, me, and Elysia all got to hang out with Steve and Anthony for that podcast. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun. Yeah, I was listening to it today, and it was a really fun conversation. There's G.I. Joe in it.
Yes.
For some reason, there's like G.I. Joe talk. There's some Would You Rathers. It's really great.
And the great thing about the Properly Howard movie reviews is that you don't have to have seen the movie to enjoy their podcast. It's a lot of fun, a lot of banter, a lot of pop culture nonsense. So check out their feed in the show notes below. Next episode will be out August 28th, and it's going to be RoboCop 2014 remake.
Nice.
Over on the Woolshift Dust feed with Elysia, she's covering Dune. Hey, more Dune. We got a lot of Dune. We got a lot of spice in your podcast ears this month. I'm breaking down on all these crazy analogies. We're just going to talk about the fact that Alicia's covering Dune. She's covering the book, talking about books, talking about documentary films, video games, the whole culture of Dune, the history of Dune. And this is all sort of moving in prep towards the big Dune movie later this year. So go check out her podcast, Woolshift Dust. Also, the Woolshift Dust book club is in progress. That is they're covering each of the 3 Woolshift Dust books, and you can find stuff for that on Patreon at patreon.com/WoolshiftDust.
Cool.
John, what's happening with us? It's crazy.
So much. We have a bunch of different shows running all at the same time. We have Wheel of Time coming up very quickly, and you and I are already recording episodes for that because we have screeners for it. And we will be dropping 3 episodes the day of the premiere on September 1st. So you will get plenty of podcasts that day, as well as a Foundation podcast that will come out that day. Also, we have a 3rd show running concurrently, Ahsoka on Disney Plus, where we don't have screeners. So those episodes are going to come out on Saturday. The podcast will come out on Saturday. Also, we just can't flood the feed that much on Fridays. We got plenty coming out that day.
Yeah, it's just too much for people to listen to, and then they end up never listening to stuff. So we want to make sure we meter it out. But man, some of those trailers for Ahsoka are looking fire.
It got me hype. In the very limited time I have right now, because of so many shows we're covering, I am listening to the Heir to the Empire first book. Mm-hmm. And I very much doubt that they're pulling much from this because it's so divorced from where they are in the timeline right now. But there's a lot of cool stuff. And I hope that they pull a lot of the personality points of Thrawn from it.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good series. Oh, do you know Joanna Robinson from the Ringer? She, I guess, some industry in the know people got to go to private screenings of this, and she wrote on her Twitter feed that it was good, and she's very happy.
Oh, good.
So
good.
That gives me faith. I have faith, John. I have faith in something. I finally found something I have faith in.
Look at
Dave Filoni.
Look at you. Yeah, so Brendan and I are going to be playing Skyrim, The Elder Scrolls V on the Lorehounds Play. That's going to come out either late in the month or very early September. We've got to get that scheduled because, things are busy right now with all these things and life. Yeah, we did drop an episode of Second Breakfast exclusively for patrons recently. We had a One Piece episode recently that I actually got feedback on today, which is fun.
Yep.
And so we are doing a lot of stuff. Are you doing an MC Universe recap of Secret Invasion? Is that happening?
There was supposed to be something happening, but I think August is I think we just, the lesson that we learned this summer is that, June, July, and August programming are tough because everybody's this way and that way. So yeah, our schedule's kind of out the window here.
I can also ask you, is it worth talking about again?
Yeah, I've got to talk to Elysia and Jean and see where they're at too, and see what we want to cover. There is some news. There's some interesting stuff coming up, so we could just
you could probably combine it, right? Right, yeah. Combine it with Blue Beetle talk. Blue Beetle is DC, isn't it?
Blue Beetle, don't at me, don't quote me.
No,
I don't know.
Hold on. Let me do this. Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle is well outside my.
Yeah, I've heard some mixed things about it. Very mixed things.
Yeah, they were talking on. There was some chatter on our Discord today about it, and just some. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say too much. I mean,
this
go on the
is
Discord.
Indeed, a DC Comics property.
Okay,
so this is not the MCU.
Yep,
this
DC.
The DCEU. Yep. I guess that's what they call their film.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Jean and Elysia and I have got to talk and recalibrate, and we're going to see where. Yeah, the hard part right now is, as we said, we've just got Foundation, Ahsoka, and Wheel of Time all overlapping. So we'll see where we are with the MCU in September.
Yeah, but anyway, here's to another 2+ hour Foundation podcast. Hope everyone's still enjoying the ride. We'll be back again next week, and I promise it will probably be around the same length.
John, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.